Hello, it's Mr. Turek. So for your first lesson in comp photo here, or comp arts as I'll sometimes call it, we're going to learn the pen tool, which is kind of the most essential tool you're going to use in Illustrator. It's kind of a frustrating tool to use at first, so just be patient. This is something you're going to have to practice to get good at. It's not going to come instantly. For this particular project, it's pretty straightforward. There are, I believe, 4 tutorials. You need to complete the first and second tutorial. Those are mandatory, and then you have a choice between the last two, 3A and 3B. Try to complete these as close as you can to what the paths are in the tutorial. They don't have to be like 100% perfect, but for you to understand the tool, you got to try to get it as close to the tracing as possible. So here are the tutorials. You're going to find these in the project folders, and at Moto I should be posting folders to give you access to these files. Just download number 1, number 2, and then you can pick between 3A and 3B. If you want to download both of them and just kind of open them up and take a look at them, you can. Otherwise, I'm going to go through these tutorials in a video demonstration real quick for you at the end of this video. Bezier curves are what the pen tool makes, and they're popularized by a French engineer, Pierre Bezier. They're named after him, and essentially you have to understand the fundamentals of the curve and how handles affect the curve. So for each Bezier curve, there's an anchor point, and from that anchor point, if you want to create a curve, you're going to pull a handle, and that handle determines the flow of the curve, or the actual like direction of the curve. If you look at these charts here, you can kind of see how the relationship to the handles makes the curve do what it does. Here's an example of how your Bezier curves are going to look in Illustrator. This is actually a screenshot of Illustrator. Here's an anchor point. Here's another anchor point with the handles, and you can see how those affect the curve there. And this GIF on the right hand side here, this is kind of the process for drawing curves. I'm going to go through this in the demonstration, but the more you see and understand how curves are affected by the handles, the more familiar you'll be with this tool. Just some basic vocab though before we get started, and you need to kind of realize that this is jargon that I'm going to use and that you're expected to use as well. So when you're reading about strokes and paths and anchor points, you need to know what those mean, because that's the only way people ever refer to them in the industry. I mean, you can't call them kind of what comes to mind first. You want to try to call them what they're actually called if you want to get anywhere with learning this program or understanding what this program is all about. So the basics here are pretty straightforward. The stroke is the color, or the thickness of the path. Now the path is this blue line in the middle here. That is mathematically defined when you draw it, like when you pull your direction points or your handles out from an anchor point. You're going to create a path, and you can apply any kind of stroke, color, or thickness to that path. That doesn't change the location of the path or its direction at all. That just changes its appearance. Around most objects in Illustrator, you're going to have something called a bounding box. The bounding box is this blue rectangle, and these little things on the bounding box here are the bounding box handles here, and you can use those to kind of reshape the path as a kind of like a square object almost. And when you get into the program, you'll kind of see what they do. The end points of a path are called anchor points. Sometimes I'll just call them an anchor or a point, just real quickly, and sometimes I'll use stroke and path in the same sentence to kind of mean a path. And then the direction line here and direction point, sometimes those are called handles. I commonly call them handles. So again, just realize this is the vocab for this. And when I get into the demonstration, that's the vocab I'm going to use. I'm also going to use a lot of other vocab words for various things in Illustrator. Just try to keep track of it, and realize that you're going to get used to it. You're going to practice this. You're going to see it a bunch of times, so eventually you'll start speaking the language of this program. And once you do, you'll have an easier time of it. Alright, for the pen tool tutorial project, I'm just kind of going to walk you through some basics of how to set the project up so that it's easier to hand in before I start talking about how to use the pen tool and all that. Real quick, this is probably what you'll see when you see the project folder. It may look a little different. When you look at your file types here, the ones with .ai at the end are the ones that are Adobe Illustrator files. So those are the ones that you have to complete. They're numbered. So here's the first one. And then Draw a Bowl of Fruit is just a PDF. It's not an actual file. You have to create a new file for that, and I'll go over that. But to download these or to preview them, you just click on them to preview them, obviously. So for the bowl of fruit, you can click on that and just read the instructions. For these files, you're going to have to download those. So you can check mark it or just right click on it and then click download. And then it should pop up down here in Chrome, and it shouldn't take too long to download, hopefully. Once it's downloaded, it'll be in your download folder. You'll probably want to move it to a different place so that you don't open and save it from your download folder. So I'm just going to click and drag mine to the desktop, and that'll move it to my desktop. And then you're going to want to rename it so that it has your name on it. So to rename something, you can click on it once and then click on it again to rename it. And I'm just going to add Turek to the beginning of my file here so that it's now my file. And then you can double click to open it. And I already have Adobe Illustrator open, so it should load pretty quick here. And then I'm going to walk you through this file. This is your first tutorial for the pen tutorial. Whoa, don't click cancel. You want to click open. Sorry. Open, there you go. Sometimes fonts are a bit tricky. If you don't have a font on your computer, it won't load unless you just say open, and it'll replace it with a different font. So this is what you should see when you open the first pen tutorial, and it's talking about layers. Make sure you read this. Kind of important. Layers essentially are how you keep a file in Adobe Illustrator organized, how you make things visible or not visible, how you lock them in position, or how objects stack on top one of another. So right now our layers palette is open. If it's not open, just go to Windows, and then Layers should be an option down here. So it's open. And then if you look at the right hand side of your screen, our layers palette looks a whole lot different than this screenshot. This tutorial here is from a very old CS, I think it's like CS1 or 2. So, but the same stuff is pretty much there. All the same buttons are there. This program hasn't changed in a whole lot over the years. And then just sort of read this and go through it step by step. It's going to be kind of similar to this. It'll look a little different, obviously, and I'll just sort of walk you through it if you're having trouble reading this or following these instructions. Padlock means a layer is locked. So if I zoom in here, you see that little lock button? That just kind of means it's locked. You can't move anything on the layer. You can't work on it. If you want to kind of move around easily, just hold down the space bar for easy navigation. Alright, that's a pretty easy tool to use. And we're going to turn on the editing layer here. Notice that all this information will pop up. Okay. Layers are blank, and the edit columns show that you can work on those layers. The small pen nib to the right of the layers means any new object will get written to this layer. So if I click on that layer, means it's editable, or I am working on that layer, so anything I create on this layer will show up in this layer. You can move it to another layer if you want, but realize that if you're not on the right layer, you're going to generate everything to the one you're currently working on, or the currently active layer. And that can be kind of frustrating once you understand that palette. If you start building something and it's like, oh no, it's on the wrong layer, that can be kind of frustrating. So make sure you are on the correct layer, or you're aware of what layer you're working on. Select any text in this window by clicking on the baseline. Notice that the paths and anchor points are red like the label. The color square to the right of the layer means that an object selected on that layer is a red part of the red layer. So if I click on this here, means it's on this layer. If I click on anything else that's on another layer that's unlocked, it will be the color code of that layer. If I drop down this, notice here that's the red square indicating it's on this red layer here, and pretty much every object on here is, because this layer is set to red, it'll show as red, and that can be kind of handy. You can always change that if you want by just sort of double clicking on your layer and changing your color here. Draw some objects with the pen tool, and notice that they'll be highlighted red because we're working on this layer here. So if I click and drag, my handles and my path are all red. Now mine is kind of invisible right now. You're going to want to make sure that you have a black stroke and no fill applied to your lines here. Okay. Alright. So right now we're working on the edited layer, and you've made some lines. They're highlighted red because we're on the editing layer, and because this is the most recent object, it will be on the top of the layer. That's kind of how object creation works. Alright, so now it says when you're finished, show and unlock the assignment and objects layer by clicking the eye icon. So we're going to go over our layers palette again, and we're going to click on that eye icon, and then you'll notice some stuff will show up to the right here. We're going to use the space bar to toggle to our hand and click and drag our way up here. Pretty straightforward. And then what it wants you to do is it wants you to sort the objects on this in the objects layer here, object sublayer here, into their proper groups or layers. So we're just going to go to our layers palette and drop this down. Okay, we'll turn on the objects layer. Okay, and it's also locked, so we're going to unlock that layer, and we're going to unlock our other layers down here. So if I zoom in, I'll show you. So you got your objects layer and then your 3 or 4 other shape layers. We're going to unlock all those layers so that we can organize these. Now if you were using the pen tool earlier, that'll be the tool you're currently using. To switch back to your regular select tool, go over to your toolbox and click on your selection tool. You can also hit the V key on your keyboard or the P key to switch to your pen tool. These are hotkeys. You're going to use the pen tool a lot, you're going to use the selection tool a lot, so sometimes it's handy to remember your hotkeys so that you don't have to move your mouse all the way over here. So we can start sorting our objects. So if I click on this object, that will highlight it in my objects layer here. And you can notice that it'll show up here as gray because that's what the color of our layer is. And then I'm just going to click and drag that layer listing to stars. And you know it's going to go to the stars layer because that big black arrow is next to that layer. So if I let go, now it's pink, it's on the stars layer. So I just got to sort these. And you can sort these by holding down shift and just sort of, or holding down control to select multiple objects. Okay, so we got all the squares selected. We're going to move those down to squares. Alright, we've got our stars, some more stars here. If I click on the little circle and then shift click on that other little circle, that will add to my selection as well in the layers palette. You can also, yeah, to deselect something you got to click off it. You can also click on something and then hold down the shift key and click again, and that will add it to your selection. But to move it in the layer listing here, you're going to have to actually highlight that layer listing. So I've highlighted those. I'm going to move them to my star layer. Okay, and then we got, what do we got left here? We got circles. Okay, so 3 circles, shift. I'm going to hold down the shift key and then click on all 3 of those, move those to circles. Same with triangles, shift, and move those to triangles. So now they're all sorted. So if I want to shut off the stars layer, I can shut that off and all the stars disappear. Same goes for circles. And because they're organized, or they're layered in a different way, if I want them to stay in that organization, I can move my layers here. So if I move circles above stars, it will cover the stars. Okay? So just kind of play around with that to get the hand of that. Okay, so once you're done kind of reordering layers, which is kind of what this step 2 talked about, you're going to turn on the cut and paste layer. Okay, so the cut and paste layer is kind of at the bottom of your layers palette, and I've already collapsed all of my layers here so I can see it. And I'm just going to hit the little eyeball icon, and your cut and paste layer is up here, so we're going to toggle to the hand tool. We can drag our way up here, and we're kind of really zoomed in, so to zoom back out you can hit Control minus. Okay, and all you're going to do here is you're going to experiment with cutting and pasting in front and back, and then sending objects to back or front using some hotkeys here. So you're going to click on shape D, and then you're going to hit Control X to cut. And it doesn't really disappear, it goes to your clipboard, and your clipboard stays active as so long as this computer program or any program can accept that kind of file from your clipboard. So I'm going to paste it somewhere. If I just click over here and then click paste, it'll just paste randomly, and it'll paste on top of everything. So if we look at our layer here, that group is way on top. I can cut it again, and then what we can do is we can, instead of pasting in front or what have you, we can paste in back. So if I hit Control B, notice that that flower shape is now behind shape B. Okay, same thing holds true for paste in front. Again, Control X, Control F, now it's pasted in front. These are really handy options when you want to layer objects directly over each other. So let's say I wanted to put another flower behind this D shape. I could hit Control C to copy it, and then Control B to paste it in back. And if I just expand that from the center, I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt. I've made a copy, a perfect copy behind that shape, and it's exactly in place. That saves you a lot of time. This is a super handy trick for when you want to make an outline of a shape, or just make another one of it and sort of expand it. And again, the Shift and Alt, when you create an object, you can like rescale it like this, but if you hold down the Shift key, that'll keep the proportions of the object. You hold down the Alt key, that'll expand it from the center. Okay, so that's a little bit handy tip right there. So now we got all these objects. Another thing they want you to experiment with is Shift Control bracket key. So if I hit Shift Control left bracket key, that will send it to the bottom of my layer. And you notice here in the layer palette, it's snapped down to the bottom of that layer. If I hit Shift Control right bracket key, that'll go to the very top. And if I hit Control bracket key, it'll go one step down. So if you're watching this, it'll go one step down as I hit a bracket key left or right. This is super handy if you just want to quickly reorganize something, or quickly bring it to the front, or quickly push it to the back. Alright, so now we're going to get into the pen tool. If I turn on step number 6 here, it says turn on creating Bezier curves layer. So if I turn that on, those are way down here in the corner. Okay, so creating Bezier curves, and I'm going to switch to my pen tool. I'm just going to hit the P key here, and I've got smart guides turned on. To turn those off, just hit Control U or Control U to turn them on. Smart guides help you line stuff up. They're really handy for creating straight lines. but I'm not going to use them right now, so I'm just going to turn them off. And then I'm going to hold down the Alt key and use my scroll wheel to zoom in here. And then I'm just going to walk you through this stuff. I'm going to go real kind of fast, and when you're doing it alone, try to do it on your own and read. I just am kind of doing this to save you time in the video. So to make straight lines, just click. Okay. And right now I don't have a stroke applied, so make sure you have a black stroke applied down here and no fill. If you don't see black as your color down here, it should be up here in your color palette. So yeah, to continue a point after you have stopped it, just click on the last point you made and then continue clicking. So I'm going to keep clicking here to make straight lines. This is how you make straight lines with the pen tool. And once you're done, you got to deselect the line, because wherever I click, it'll make a line. To deselect this and start a new line, you're going to use the Control key. So hold down Control, and that'll toggle to your last selection tool. And what that'll allow you to do is click off of that path you made and deselect it so that you can move around again. So make sure you do that after each line you create. So now we're going to scroll down here. Another handy tip is to hold down the Shift key when you make straight lines. So if I click once here and then hold down the Shift key and then click again, that'll make a perfect 90-degree angle line. So I can go Shift click, and no matter where I hold Shift and click, it'll make a perfect 90-degree angle. So if I click down here and then hold down Shift click, that'll make a perfect 45-degree angle. Shift click, okay, nice and easy. Okay, so I'm not going to trace the word easy, but essentially, you know, before you start tracing, make sure you deselect your line. So I didn't do that, and I clicked, so it continued my line here. If you mess up like that, just hit Control Z. That's an easy way to go a step back, and you can Control Z as many times as your computer can hold undos. And right now, I think I'm able to do 92 undos. So I've got plenty of memory there. So again, remember, hold down Control, click off of your line to deselect it, and then trace the word easy. And I'm just going to start the E here, and I'm not shift clicking. I should probably do that. Okay. Obviously, you can do this in practice. Get used to using Control and clicking off. Alright, so they want you to draw any four-letter word with straight lines. Please choose a school-appropriate word for that, and practice doing that on your own. I'm going to skip that for now, and I'm going to talk to you about Bezier curves. Okay, shortest distance between 2 points obviously is a straight line. A Bezier curve is defined, though, by 4 points: 2 anchor points and 2 handle or direction points. So when you create curves, depending on the location of these direction points is how the curve will look. So, you know, here we got some weird looking curves. That's because the handles are going in weird directions. So now, this is kind of the hardest part about the pen tool. The biggest learning curve is making curves. Haha, pun intended. So be patient with yourself and just practice, okay? To make a curve or start one, you're going to click and drag to pull out the handle, okay? And because I'm dragging upward, that'll determine that the curve goes up. Okay, now I'm going to continue downward. So that means the next part of the curve is going to go down. It'll pull the handle in 2 different directions. So they'll pull a handle for the last bit of the curve I made, and they'll pull one out for the next curve I'm going to make. So now I'm going to click and drag. That'll pull my handle out, and I can leave my handle point on the little guides here. Okay, I'm going to keep clicking and dragging, and click and drag one last time. Okay, and then remember to Control and then click off of your curve to deselect it. Okay, so that's how you create curves. Okay, so actually we're supposed to be working, instead of on the cut and paste layer, we're supposed to be working on the work layer. So I'm going to switch over to that right now. That's okay that you're not working on it. Click and drag, keep practicing. Okay. Now we're going to get into kind of the hard stuff here. This is when you mix straight and curved lines. So to do that, we're going to make some curved lines first. Okay. And then I'm going to pull out to complete this curve here. Okay. And then if I click on this again, that'll cut off that direction handle. So if I do that, I'll just click once, and then notice it disappeared. And then I can shift click over here to make a straight line. So that's how you mix curved and straight lines. I'm going to deselect that, and now I'm going to show you how to mix a bunch of different kinds of lines here. So if I start with straight lines, so shift click, click here, and I want to start a curved line, you just got to pull out a handle. You can't click out here. You got to start clicking from the point. So you notice how it changes appearance. I don't know if I can zoom in. Nope, I can't zoom in and show you that. But it changes appearance here to a little V shape. And I can click and drag out a handle, and that'll make a curved line for me. Okay? So that can be kind of frustrating for beginners. Just practice that. And then to make a straight line again, of course, click on it once to get rid of the handle, and then make a straight line. Okay? And then control click off of that. The next thing you're going to do, we're on what? We're on number 12. So now we're going to go down here to number 13. Okay? And you want to make sure if you're working on this curve for number 13 that you're on your work layer. Like I said, up until this point I was working on the cut and paste layer. That's okay. Accidents happen. Switch over to your work layer. And this path should be on your work layer. It should be highlighted blue. You'll notice that it doesn't quite match the path here, and what they want you to do is use your direct select tool to fit the curve to this template. So to do that, you're going to switch to your direct select tool, and then you'll notice that it's got anchor points here, but the handles are kind of off. So just click on a handle with the direct select tool and you can move that curve. Okay, you're going to do a lot of tracing of objects with the pen tool, and what I highly recommend you do is kind of loosely trace them with the pen tool, and then go back and use your direct select tool to match the curve to the object. This is a whole lot easier than trying to trace it perfect the first time. So go through this curve and just do what I'm doing. I'm taking the handles and I'm stretching them, moving them around. Okay. At any point in time you can switch to your direct select tool and you can move handles or move anchor points. For this particular problem, number 13, you don't have to move anchor points. Okay. So here up top we got a complex one. You'll notice that these handles are crossing. Don't let handles cross. Often that makes a really bad looking curve. And this is kind of hard to match here. Try to get as close as you can. You don't have to get it perfect. Okay. I sure as heck am not able to do it. So get as close as you can, obviously. And just keep adjusting until you're happy with it. Again, click off of it to deselect it. Alright. Now, like I said, before you trace this, think in terms of like you can adjust it after you trace it. So just get kind of close and then come back. Okay, so I'm going to start out with the pen tool here. I'm going to click and drag, and I'm just making an educated guess as to where these points go. Alright, click and drag, and then click and drag. So it's close, but it's kind of not right down here. So I'm going to switch to my direct select tool, and I'm going to clean that up. So I'm just going to bring this out. Okay, I'm going to bring this handle up a little bit. I'm going to maybe elongate this point. Okay, and I kind of know where to put my anchor points because I've been doing this for a while. You may make an inaccurate guess, so make your best guess as to where they go, and then adjust for any mistakes when you're done. Okay. So here you're gonna trace this. Have fun. I'm gonna show you one last tip here. For certain parts, you can make all of these parts with separate lines, so you can start tracing the end here by clicking and dragging, and then clicking and dragging. Okay, and then we can clean it up with the direct select tool. So I can bring this up. I can pull this out. Okay, couple tips here. So if I'm happy with that, I can start my new tracing right there and keep going. Okay. I can also, okay, remember to control deselect here. I can also add anchor points. So on this O here, let's say I build it like this. Okay. And I close my path. You see the little circle next to the pen tool? That'll close my path. If I want another anchor point, you just gotta click on that path that's active, and you should see a plus sign. Okay, and if I go back to my direct select tool here, I can use my direct select tool to move around anchor points and get that more exact if I want to. More often than not, less anchor points is better though, so try to keep your anchor point count down. I'm not going to trace the rest of this, but you can. You need to get in the habit of doing this, so please practice doing that. Let's go to the next one. Alright, so here's the next concept. I'm going to show you how to break handles. Okay, so when you start a curve, it's easy enough. Click and drag, and then click and drag like it says here, 2A. Alright, and now we're going to pull out a new direction line. So if I click and drag here, notice that the last point I made the last direction point I made did not change. Okay, and if I option click and drag, I can pull out a broken handle. Alright, this will allow me to change direction of my curve. So I can pull it up here, and then when I click and hold down like that, I've got a curve that goes up like that, and I have a point here. Now that's one way to do it. One way is to hold down the option key and click and drag to break your handle. This is probably the fastest option. If you don't like doing that or remembering that, what you can do is make a regular curve and then click over here, and then you can break this handle using another tool. So if you click and hold on the pen tool here, the convert anchor point tool allows you to break a handle and bring it up. This can be really handy if you like to just sort of loosely trace things first and then go back and adjust them later. Okay, if I continue drawing this line here, I got to switch back to my pen tool. Okay, and then start my line again. So hover your pen over that last line, click and drag down, click and drag, click and drag. Another option for breaking handles is when you have the pen tool, you can hold down the Alt key, and that'll switch you to the convert anchor point tool, and then you can click on handles and you can adjust them or break them. Okay, so that's an option I'll use an awful lot. And you can always, if you switch to your direct select tool, you can always again click on those handles and adjust them, okay, to match whatever curve you're trying to match here. Alright, so this next one here, they want you to draw this little cloud here. So practice option click drag to pull a curve in the new direction. And then the last thing for this assignment is to trace this beast of a line here. The reason I'm making you do this stuff is because I want you to know how to do this. If you can trace this and you get used to using the pen tool, then when you start doing your assignments in earnest, you're going to be really, really good at them and just super, super quick with the pen tool. So the second tutorial you have to do is called Draw a Fruit Bowl, and it's just a PDF. You're going to make your own file and just sort of follow the PDF and draw a fruit bowl using the pen tool, and you're going to colorize the whole thing. So if you click on it in the project folder, it'll give you a preview of the file, and you can just read along with it and look at the pictures and just follow these instructions, or you can kind of watch this video and sort of listen to me as you make your file. I highly recommend, even though you may be using my video, that you also use the PDF if you get stuck or you can't, or you get sick of rewinding the video or what have you. I'm just going to quickly go through kind of what I show you how to do in this PDF here, and I'm not going to refer to it. I'm just going to kind of do it. So I'll probably go a little faster than you're probably used to. Alright, so first things first, you got to make a new file in Illustrator. So File, New, Make sure you give it your name and then something about the project, so fruit bowl, turret, and then just click OK. The default size is OK. Then we're going to switch to our pen tool here, and you're going to make your grape. So making a grape is real easy. You're just going to click and drag, and then when you get back to the start here, you're going to want to make sure that you're clicking on your first point to complete the shape. You'll notice that it shows a little circle by the pen tool to indicate that you can close that shape. So when you see that circle, click on that point and drag out your handle to complete the curve. So once you've got your grape made, you're going to want to switch to your selection tool by clicking on it, and then you'll notice down here in the stroke and fill section of your toolbox, the default stroke and fill for all objects is black and white usually. So the white fill is right here, and then there's a black stroke behind it. Sometimes, depending on which one you click on, that will become the active color of the object. And right now the fill is on top of the stroke, so that'll be active. And we're going to go over to the swatches panel on the right hand side of the screen, and because the fill is active here, I can go to my swatches and I can make it a purple fill. That's just one way to color it. If you double click on the fill, you'll bring up the color picker, and this gives you a lot more flexibility. You can kind of create a custom purple if you want. Okay, and that's how you color objects. There's a lot more to the swatch palette than I'm showing you right now, but that's kind of the basics right there. If you don't see it, make sure you go to Window and then Swatches to turn it on. Alright, so let's copy our grape. To copy your grape, just hold down the Alt key and click and drag on it with your selection tool. You'll notice that whenever you hold down the Alt key and hover over an object, you can see that the cursor kind of doubles, and that just means you're able to copy it. I can rotate this now by hovering my cursor outside of my object, and I can reshape it, make it bigger, wider, what have you. And I just want to keep doing this until I've got enough grapes here to make a bunch of grapes. Okay, and I'm clicking and dragging to select a bunch of objects here at once, or I can click and select individual grapes, and then I can rotate those however I want. I can reshape them. I'm not going to get too wild and crazy here for the sake of time, but you can obviously make a better looking bunch of grapes than I can. And I can always individually color these with different kinds of purples if I want. Again, to color it, just select it and then pick a purple from your swatch panel here. Real simple. Now we got to draw a leaf. To draw your leaf for your bunches of grapes here, I'm going to recommend that you zoom in, so you can hold down the Alt key and use your click wheel to scroll in and out, or you can hit Control plus or Control minus to zoom in and out. And then remember, your space bar toggles your hand tool so that you can move around. I'm going to switch to the pen tool now so that we can draw, and then I'm just going to click and drag and Option or Alt click and drag to create pointed corners here. So I'm going to start out my curve by clicking and dragging, and I'm going to click and drag again, and then on this last point here I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'm going to click and drag out a broken handle. Notice that this handle doesn't react to or influence the previous handle I made because it's broken, and I can keep going. Notice there's a little point there. We're trying to make a pointy looking leaf here. So I'll hold down the Alt key again, click on my point, break the handle. Okay, keep making sharp points for my leaf here. Alt, click, drag, click and drag, Alt, click and drag. Okay, I'm just going to mess up a couple times here. Let's say I don't really do so well on the other side here, and then I close my shape. That's okay. There's some things you can do to clean up a shape once you draw it. To clean up a shape, once you draw it, you can use two tools. There's the Convert Anchor Point tool, and then there's the Direct Select tool. If I switch to my Direct Select tool, I can take an anchor point, I can click on that, I can move it around, and I can take my handles and move those around so that I can reshape the basics of my leaf here. If you have handles though on an anchor point, they will stay united or unbroken until you break them with another tool. That other tool is the Convert Anchor Point tool. So to switch to that tool, click and hold on your pen tool icon in your toolbox, and then release your mouse button over the Convert Anchor Point tool, which is at the bottom of your options for that tool. That'll switch it to the Convert Anchor Point tool. Now you can click on things like your handles and you can break those. You can also, if you want, click on an anchor point and re-pull that anchor point so that it's curved again. That's kind of handy sometimes, but I usually use it to just break my handles. Now this is a part that most students have trouble with. They can't click on the handles, they're not used to clicking on points. That's kind of why I recommend that you zoom in so that you can see things easier. And if you're having a really hard time of it, turn on Smart Guides. If you're having a hard time selecting points or adjusting points with your Convert Anchor Point tool or your Direct Select tool, turn on Smart Guides. To do that, hit Control U, and that'll turn on Smart Guides. You'll notice that every path and anchor will have a word by it, and then the handles will be highlighted so that you know exactly where they're at and they're easier to select. So if I switch between my Convert Anchor Point tool and my Direct Select tool, I'll have a really easy time clicking on handles, clicking on paths, or anchor points. It's a lot easier with Smart Guides to see where things are because they're kind of highlighted. If you are terrible at remembering hotkeys, again, Smart Guides, you can turn them on via the menus here. Just go to View and down to Smart Guides and just click on the Smart Guides option to show that. The hotkey is right over here. It's Control U. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to my Convert Anchor Point tool here, and I'm going to re-pull these handles and break them. Re-pull that handle and break it, and I'm going to switch to my Direct Select tool, and I'm going to clean up those last couple points there. So now I got my grape leaf. Once I've got my grape leaf here, I can select it with my regular select tool here, my selection tool, and then I can go to my swatch panel and I can change it to green. And then I want to bring it over to my bundles of grapes, and I want to copy it so that I have two leaves on my bundle of grapes here. And we can actually rotate this all the way. And there you go, bundle of grapes. Now I'm going to show you how to group objects. Grouping objects is really easy. Just with your selection tool, click and drag to select a group of objects, and then go to Object, Group. The hotkey for that obviously is right next to its command. It's just Control G. When you group a group of objects that you've selected, they'll behave as one. You can rotate them together, you can resize them together. You don't have to keep clicking and dragging to select all your objects, which can get kind of frustrating at times. So I'm just gonna kind of leave that as is. With groups, there's a couple special things you have to consider. If you want to edit this again, like let's say I don't like the leaves at this angle, the fastest way to do that is to just double click on the object. You're going to enter what's called isolation mode. You'll see this gray bar at the top, and then any of your other objects on your artboard are going to be a little bit light gray, so that you isolate this group or this object. And then you can just click on it like normal and edit it as if it were a regular ungrouped object. That's kind of handy. It used to be that you had to go ungroup it or go into the layers panel, and yeah, it was kind of nonsense, and this makes it much easier to edit groups. Just rearrange some of my grapes here. When I'm happy with it, to exit isolation mode, I can just double click off of my object that I've isolated, and I'll go back to regular mode, and my group will still be a group. Now what I want to do is show you how to draw an orange using constrained paths. So I'm going to switch to my pen tool. If it's still at the convert anchor point tool, remember just click and hold on that tool and release over the tool you want in the toolbox. So I want to release my mouse key over the pen tool. And then to draw my orange, I'm going to click, drag, and you'll notice your handles are kind of free floating. If you hold down the shift key though, your handles will constrain to 45 or 90 degree angles. So to make a really good looking circle, we're going to constrain these handles to horizontal and vertical planes so that they look real nice. So I'm going to hold down shift and drag to the left here, and then going to click, drag, and hold down shift to constrain my anchor point here to make a nice even curve. And I'm going to keep doing that as I go around. Notice your smart guides will show you when your pen lines up with the previous points. So if I want to line it up with my first point here and my other point there, it'll show where those two intersect, and it'll help me line up my orange here. So click and drag, hold down shift. Okay, then I can line this up right there, click and drag, and then hover your point over your last point at the top and click and drag to create your orange. And remember, if it's not a perfect looking orange, it doesn't have to look perfect. You can always adjust it with your direct select tool. Go back to your direct select tool, click on your anchors, move them around, reshape your orange so it's a little bit more round, and then you can always click on it and change its fill to an orange color. Alright, now we're going to make a banana, and part of the banana's got a couple of parts to it. It's going to be a little bit harder shape than circles, so bear with me. Take your pen tool and just start a normal curve like you would on any other shape. Click and drag, kind of like I am here, and then you obviously know what a banana shape is, but you want to try to keep it down to just a handful of points. So just kind of vaguely draw a random kind of smiley face shape. So I've got the tip right here, and then I'm going to click and drag out there, and then I'm going to click and drag right there, and then I'm going to close my shape right here. And this doesn't look anything like a banana, really. It looks more like a deranged carrot, I guess. You can always adjust and add more anchor points to your shapes. Remember that. You don't have to draw it perfectly on your first attempt. So if I want to add anchor points, I just hover my pen tool over this path, click once to add an anchor point. Now I'm going to go back, use my direct select tool, I'm going to pull this down, and we got a pretty good looking banana shape right there. I can also take these anchor points and rearrange them, pull them, do whatever I need to do to make it more banana-like. Doesn't really matter, it's just an example. And then select it and make it yellow. One thing I'm going to add to this is some details. One of those details is going to be a crease line down the middle of the banana. So switch down to your pen tool, click and drag to make a simple curve, okay, to be the crease of your banana. Now you'll notice you're going to have the stroke and fill of the previous object you were making. So in that case your stroke is black and your fill is yellow. To set stroke to none, you're going to go to the stroke and fill part of your toolbox. To change the stroke and fill of a certain object, or to change the stroke of an object, it's not hard at all. Just select that object, go to your selection tool, and then click on some visible part of that object, and then in the stroke and fill section of your toolbox, if you want to adjust the stroke or the fill, make sure you click on that. And then what we're going to do first here is we're going to set the fill for this stroke to none, because we don't want to see a fill, we just want to see the crease line. So I'm going to click on the none option, and you'll notice that that little half shape goes away and we're just left with this stroke on the path. Let's click on the stroke, and then let's click on our object here so that we have that selected, and then I'm going to go to the stroke panel on the right hand side of the screen. If you don't see the stroke panel on the right hand side of your screen, make sure you go to window and then stroke to turn it on. Go to the stroke panel, and then we're going to turn up the weight to about 3 or 4 points, and you'll notice it gets thicker on the screen. These options are at the top of your screen in the option bar up here, but this panel here gives you a whole lot more options. I can determine how the caps of my strokes look. I can make it a dotted line if I want. There's a lot more options there. So now we've got our 3 main pieces of fruit here. I can continue drawing if I want. I'm not going to sit here and draw everything for you, but I do expect you to make at least, I would say, I think I say in the tutorial 4 or 5 pieces of fruit. So, you know, that's not too hard. Draw like a pear, an apple, and just, yeah, put them all together in a bowl. The bowl isn't too easy either, but you know, it doesn't have to be a super complex bowl. You can do a half bowl or what have you. If you're having trouble or can't remember how to reorganize your objects on your layers, that's pretty easy. To reorganize objects on a layer, just select that object and then go to your layers panel and drop down your layer. You'll see all the objects that you've built in your layers panel. Now I've made a group out of the parts of my banana, and I've made a group of the grapes. If you drop down a group, you'll see all the objects in that group, which for the grape group is quite a lot of objects. There's a lot of grapes in there. So we'll collapse that there. But if I want, let's say I want my orange to be over my banana, I can take my orange and re-layer it by putting it on top of my banana, and then it'll appear on top of the banana there. Another great little tip is to use the control and bracket keys. So if I select my orange here and I go control left bracket key, that'll move it down a step. Okay, so now it's behind the grapes and the orange. If I hit shift control right bracket key, that'll bring it to the very top of my layers palette. Those are handy tricks to know when you have lots and lots of shapes that you want to rearrange. Or, you know, you can always just go to your layers palette. Again, you need a bowl and 5 pieces of fruit. I'm not going to show you how to do the rest of them. You just kind of have to struggle on your own. And when you're done, make sure you hand it in, make sure your file has your name on it.